This is the Slots and Sockets podcast. I am one of your hosts, IRD Moose, and my partner in crime,
Open Green.
Happy Wednesday, Turbo, and it is
happy launch day.
It is a launch day, yeah, and it's a little unusual. We're doing a special episode because the 9070 launches today, and all the reviews came out and should be available in most retailers tomorrow. So on that bombshell, no, yeah, this is going to be a really short episode. No, we want to talk about kind of the reviews we've seen going around. My general sentiment on a lot of the reviewers is that there is a huge amount of positivity pretty much across the board for the 9070 XT. The 9070 is kind of expectedly lackluster in the sentiment, but the XT seems to kind of be that sweet spot where AMD nailed the pricing. And, you know, the manufacturers have some good options for cards. We've got all kinds of variations on the same theme and different levels of overclocking too. So why don't we get into it?
Absolutely. So, the general nuts and bolts, and obviously there's lots of reviews. You should actually look at multiple reviews because it seems like there is a general consensus, but I would just say that not all reviews are giving the exact same view and have different cards. Mm-hmm. And you probably should just look because even then, even me and Moose were looking at this and there were some minor variations in some of the testing from some of the different reviews. And so all I would say is that just before you jump in to buy something, don't look to just one source, look at two or three.
Yeah.
But I think the consensus and the expectation of these cards are it's typically faster or on par with a 5070 Ti. Mm-hmm. It's faster than a 4070 Ti. It's at times very close to a 4080/4080 Super. And in very limited situations, it's approaching a 5080.
Yeah.
I say limited. I saw one or two where it was, and the question is that was an outlier. So you kind of ask the question was that a testing error or not? But needless to say, on multiple different sites, we saw some times where the 5080 was on par or marginally slower.
I think Space Marine is a good example of that, where the 5070 or the 9070 stomps the 5070 Ti and the 5080 into the ground.
And there's some games which are interesting, like Starfield, where it goes the other way.
Yeah.
Because Starfield, which we were expecting the AMD cards to do very well because it's AMD optimized. It's a game in the past they've done really well. And as you're looking at the reviews, all of the AMD cards really, and it's not just the 70 Ti XT. It was all of the AMD cards across the board in Starfield tend to struggle there, especially there. But I will say the really interesting thing and the overall tick that I have is it seems like as you go higher in resolution, the XT tends to move a little bit higher up the competitive chain. Mm-hmm. If there's a gap at 1080p, it closes it at 1440. Yep. And at 4K, you see it where it closes again. So it is a card that does typically look like it likes higher resolution. Mm-hmm. It might be that it's really utilizing that RAM, the VRAM really well. Yeah. But that's a consistent thing that we're seeing across the board from them.
Yeah, and the Space Marine thing, I believe, is an outlier because the reviewer I saw talking about, and I can't remember who it was, so that mentioned that the entire 5000 series is just struggling with Space Marine. So it looks like that might be an Nvidia driver issue, not necessarily the cards just not performing well. Because the
Yeah,
4000 series and the 3000 series don't have that issue. They actually they line up
yeah.
in the chart properly.
The other
So
thing is
yeah,
we keep in mind that with both the 50 series and the 9000 series, um, there is some expectation that there are probably bugs out there, and
mm-hmm.
there's probably ways from a driver's perspective for further optimizations. I wouldn't count on it, but I would more or less say if I've got a game where I'm underperforming, give it 3 or 6 months. Most likely, a driver or a patch in the game is going to dramatically help you in that arena.
Well, and on top of that, kind of moving forward to stock, since starting, I think you said 7 a.m. tomorrow, your micro center opens.
Yep.
Um, it looks like we've got really good stock of GPUs. In fact, from our friends over at Video Cards, we found out that Overclockers UK has 1,000 units of the Pulse, which is ASRock's. What is it? ASRock or
The Sapphire
no,
for the
Sapphire?
Pulse.
That's right, Sapphire.
But that's the
Um,
MSRP card.
yeah, the MSRP card. So a
Now that's
thousand
one
units of
model.
that. Yeah, just one. And so, if that's a indicator of stock for other models, then AMD has a really good shot of having an installed base to help them
I mean,
optimize
that's
and
just
better improve their
one.
drivers
I mean, and
at one retailer.
Sapphire. Now, Sapphire is, I think, AMD's preferred vendor, kind of like EVJ was with Nvidia before Nvidia screwed them.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna guess that that might be the most of a specific model. But let's just throw this out there. Let's say that of the other three models that of the XT, because there's three models,
Mm-hmm.
let's say the others have 500 each. So of the XT models, that's 2,000 from one vendor
One retailer.
and one vendor.
How many cards has Nvidia sold so far this year?
I mean, that's it. I mean, we talked about this last time. They're gonna now if they sell out. Now the question is, will they sell out? I think that there's so many people who want video cards, it'll sell out.
Yeah. I think it probably will. Well, and the other thing too we have to keep in mind is we've got the potential tariffs coming up. Now, there's some question whether a company like XFX will be impacted because they did just last year move their entire operations out of China. So we don't know how that's going to affect pricing.
ASRock did too.
Yeah, I think a couple of vendors did. And it wasn't just XFX, it was XFX, their parent company, and all of their child companies that did.
Mm-hmm.
So, we might actually start seeing stock issues from AMD for a completely different reason than from Nvidia. And that is, I think, the good kind of stock issue because they're actually providing cards to customers.
The only concern and the only issue I say is that AMD has been making these cards for a bit. They have been stockpiling. We know that Micro Center had these in a warehouse back in December. We know that more shipments were received January and February, and even I'm sure into March. Yeah. We know that they've kind of stockpiled these up. So this is what it is. The follow-up question I'm going to have is if these sell out instantly, is there a steady supply of GPUs that we're going to easily be able to pick these things up in 3, 5, 7, 10, 15 days down the road? Because there's so much demand. But I also think it's going to be very interesting because for gamers, I think that there's probably not, I think this is a great opportunity to get a card that's really good, but that might not be as desirable in the AI workspace or the home AI users because it's not AMD it's not Nvidia. So
Yeah.
we'll see. I still think that with as much desire as people have, I think that this will sell out.
Oh, sure.
I do not think that this is going to sell out in 3 seconds. I think they have too many of them.
It's not going to
But
be you're buying lottery tickets to be able to buy your graphics
I
card.
mean, in all honesty, and this is my 2 cents, I feel like if I went to Micro Center tomorrow morning, mine opens at 7 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
If I went there like 8 or 9, I'd be able to get a card. I might not have a choice of all of the options,
Right.
but I bet you I could get a XT card.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the one that you and I would like to look at, because there's basically 3 levels of cards. There's the stock level. There's they don't really have a name for it. The OC1, which comes out at with a boost clock around 3060
Yep.
megahertz, and that's I think 305 watts,
Yeah.
somewhere around there for the
Yep.
TBP. And then there's the OC2, which it it's set to 3100, but in some of the benchmarks, some of the results, I've seen it clock as high as 32 or potentially 33.
So you've got overclocking results at 3450.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're pushing the power and they're pushing the 10% boost. The one thing you've got to look at, and each of these cards is going to be unique, and look at the type of power input that they have.
Yep.
Some of these cards are going to be limited by the power decisions when they designed it.
Right.
So, and because we have a lot of different things, we've got 2 8-pin cards, I've got 3 8-pin cards, I've got 12-volt high power cards. Yep. The max power that I've seen available, I believe, is the Sapphire at 400,
right?
Which is the 12-volt. But I believe that the XFX has like 395. And there's a couple of them in the 350 range. So each of those 8 pins is going to be 150, and then you're going to pull 75 from the PCI Express.
Right. And so the 333 pin cards could theoretically pull 450 watts just from PCI Express, not from the power connectors, not counting the bus power.
It just depends on how the card's designed and where it's going to pull power from, because they all, be a little bit different.
Yep.
But the general gist of it is, at least from my perspective, from an overclocking view, the Sapphire Pulse is a really pretty looking card, and I hear that the cooler works really well, but the 12-volt high power scares me, and I probably am going to shy away from that because of it.
Was it the Pulse or the Nitro Plus?
The Nitro Plus.
Yeah.
The Pulse uses 2 8s.
Right.
But the other one that I think is probably, I know you were keen on the Asus.
Yeah.
And then I was really looking at the XFX. I love that cooler design.
Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, it's my second favorite. I will give it, if I had to give a design and an ingenuity design from a cooler perspective, that Nitro Plus is by far the best.
Yeah.
Cooler design.
Best industrial design, best looking. Just
if it was triple eights there, that would be ideal, because you have like that magnetic cover. It comes from the back. You have that really, really cool looking great with the LED. Mm-hmm. In all honesty, like
I think they ruined it with the 12-volt high power.
If you didn't do the 12-volt high power, I'm like, yes. Yeah. Like that was going to be the card. And then when they found it was 12-volt high power, I'm like,
and just to kind of go back to other creators, I was watching a video from Buildzoid because he did a review of the card, and one of the thing that really scares me is the same thing that scares me about the 5080, the 5090, and the 5070. All 4 of those cards are dumping all of the power from 6 rails into a single rail on the PCB. Where Sapphire did something smart, though, is they split that into two 12-volt rails, each with their own 20 amp fuse. Even though that's not necessarily great, there's no real balancing there, and you could potentially overamp a single conductor and cook your 12-volt high power cable. What that does is it does allow you to protect the card for when one of your driver MOSFETs decides to send 12 volts to whatever it's powering, whether it's your memory or core or what have you. And so what that would do is potentially save the expensive parts of your hardware while putting the less expensive parts like the power cable and stuff at risk. It's not an ideal solution. I would have preferred if they'd used the 3090's example rather than taking, say, the 4090 and 5090 tact, where they had at least 3 separate rails from the connector so they could do balancing, but they didn't. And so for me, I'm very leery of that card. I think it's less risky, but it also gives you less power overhead because the 12-volt high power setup, actually in that case, is the 12-volt 2 plus 6, because it's the H++ connector on the card. You lose 50 watts of power headroom from the connector because it's 400, not 450.
I mean, all I can say is, like, if you look at the PCB of this, if you actually look at where the PCB is,
yeah,
they had plenty of room,
right,
to do this 2 different ways. They could have done 2 high volt, 12 volt.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or they could have done 3/8. They had the space to do 3/8, and like, it would have been so easy to do 888s. You had the space in there, and you could have hidden the cables, and it would have looked equally as clean.
Yeah.
I realize, and it's funny because if you look at like YouTube reviews and you start looking at comments in YouTube, like, it is amazing how many people are like, why did you do this? 3 8-pins would have been better. Yeah. Like, how could you?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Why didn't you do 2 12-volt connectors? And everyone's like, these 12-volt connectors suck. Well, and
it's not that the 12-volt connectors suck. The implementation of the connector sucks. And this card, the Sapphire card, I think, is a great platform for a single connector, because it's 450 watts. That's right in the range for the low end of 12-volt high power. But they made the same mistake Nvidia did. And that's where I think they fell flat on their face. They could have engineered it properly and shown Nvidia how to actually balance power rather than just copying and pasting. And I think that's what they did, is they copy and pasted one of their designs from their Nvidia lineup. Wait, no, Sapphire doesn't do Nvidia. Never mind. But yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense the way they engineered it. It could have been a good design, but they just didn't do it.
Okay, so I'm searching here because what I'm hearing is that the ASRock Tai Chi also has a 12-volt high power. Now, which is interesting. I'm looking at, come on, why does nobody show me pictures? It's almost like they don't want people to see it. It's like,
right?
Okay. It does, yes. It has a single 12-volt high power connector.
Oh, yeah, I see that. 12-volt 2x6. Yeah. I mean, that cooler's pretty nice.
It's not as pretty as the...
No, true. And I'll tell you, I think it's the XFX that has the magnetic fans. So, you know, if you
Is
run your
the-
card 24/7 like I do, you're gonna need to replace fans.
Wonder what the Tai Chi is. What the price in that is going to be. It's a 3100 card, 31 megahertz card. I'd be interested to see what people say about this one if it's still the 2 fuse. They do the weird thing, and this is what drives me nuts about ASRock.
Mm-hmm.
They do the reverse flow fans. The outside fans spin counterclockwise, and the inside fan spins clockwise.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to lower turbulence, but all it's going to do is recycle the air coming on the out to get sucked back in from the other fan.
They still blow the same way. They still blow into the fans. It's just they reverse
the blade.
They reverse the blade. The blade's actually reversed. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, you can actually see if you're looking at the product page, the 2 outer black fans have fins that aim counterclockwise, and then the center fin is clockwise, and so it all 3 are set up to push through the card. Thing I don't like, nickel plated copper base, and guess what that means? Cheap. Because they just soldered a whole bunch of heat pipes to that instead of doing what pretty much everybody else is doing in the higher end 9070 XT. And they're pretty much everybody else is doing vapor chamber because it just cools better. And so I'm not saying you should avoid it because, you know, it is definitely the top level overclock card, but I'm generally not a fan of ASRock stuff. Yeah.
I'm interested to see. I'm trying to find a PCB view of this to see kind of what they're doing, but it is interesting. I don't know. At the end of the day, I'm probably just at the point where I'm like, if it's got 12 volt high power, I'm probably just like, it's not worth it. I'll let somebody else be a guinea pig. I'll find something like the XFX, the Mercury, and that still has a really good cooler, and it has a really good design, and it's 3/8. And yeah, I think that is a really attractive option. I'm interested to see. Okay, so here's the question. Okay, the Sapphire is unique in that it has the placement of the power or pointed towards the front of the case. Is this going to be a trend? Are other people going to be like, that's actually really smart because we don't need all of that space for coolers? And unless you're doing a pass-through design, a true pass-through, a lot of these are like a partial pass-through.
Yeah.
Who cares? Hide the wires. And
EVGA did that for quite a while. Like they did that.
I thought that was great with EVGAs. Yeah.
But it never caught on. And that's the thing that kind of frustrated me.
I love it. I love that. That stuff is awesome.
I thought it was a brilliant design, and it just kind of frustrated me that nobody else picked up on that, especially after EVGA just folded up shop. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, and if the Power Color Red Devil was that OC2 level, not OC1, I'd probably be going that route because I really like the design. I like the layout, but XFX with their setup looks really attractive to me, especially with the easily replaceable fans.
Oh, replaceable, clean. Like, think about that.
Cleaning too. Yeah, you don't necessarily have to disassemble the whole freaking card to blow your cooling fins out. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of benefits there. But I'm looking at retailers, and right now, nobody's listing the 9070 yet. So I'll have to check.
Okay, this is
Tomorrow at my local
interesting.
retailers.
XFX warranty.
Mhm,
Okay, 3 years for the graphics card,
mhm.
and they give a 5-year warranty on the fan.
Oh, that's cool.
I mean, it's better than a lot. And I don't know. I've never used XFX for their warranty work. Um,
I've heard they're
but
okay.
they, what they remind me of in some respects, sort of remind me of a VFG.
A little bit, yeah. Well, and they're of that same era. If you remember too, when BFG really blew up,
we just need a
XFX was kind of
BFG
behind
again.
it. Yeah.
We just need to have like what, Moose, this is it. New business venture for us. BFG EVGA.
There we go. I like it.
I mean, EVGA is pretty much dead. I mean, what do they make? They make rebranded power supplies and what? Let's see.
Case accessories. They do case accessories.
Hold on. What does EVGA sell? Okay, let's see. If I want to buy something, a pass through.
Can you buy their trademark?
So on their main page, they're selling 1,000-watt G7 power supply, an XR1 Elite, which is looks like a screen recording for streaming.
Right.
Pass through. Yep. A Z20 keyboard and an X20 mouse.
Okay.
Now, interestingly enough, they still show graphics cards on their main page.
Yeah, they probably still have stock of 30 series. And they still have warranties to honor.
Why does EVGA still have VGA and Kingpin stuff? On their main page, the home page, you see the stuff they're selling. And as you scroll down, it says graphics cards. And under featured products, it has a picture of an EVGA graphics card.
Mm-hmm.
And then it also has a picture of a motherboard. They don't make motherboards, I'm fairly certain. Well, I guess motherboards. I guess you can buy a Z790, although that would be a really not smart idea because I wonder what you're going to get BIOS support from that.
Right. But you get a 3-year warranty for $800.
These are really expensive motherboards, by the way.
Yeah.
$700 and $800.
Good grief.
So notice to self, me and Moose are going to buy EVGA when they eventually stop selling things because they're selling crap right now.
Honestly, I would rather resurrect BFG. I mean, EVGA is just... I have a feeling EVGA is just like riding the wave right now and waiting for good stuff to come back.
See, what was their website? pfgtech.com?
Mm-hmm.
What happens? pfgtech.com. Groundbreaking news. It goes nowhere. It's a white page. It doesn't even 404.
Wow, I got an error 432. I've never seen that one before. Oh, wait, now it's a parking page.
If their YouTube for BFG Technologies has 9 subscribers. Well, look, really interesting. The 9000 series, we don't have the non-XT performance. So, but I'm guessing it's going to slot in and play really hard to play with around the 5070. And probably that, especially because that 5070 is really a broken card. So I look, my 2 cents, reviews by Turbo. The XT looks great. It sounds like the XT is heavily stocked up as opposed to the non-XT.
Yep.
I think the vast majority of gamers are looking at that. If you have the choice between a non-XT and an XT, I firmly believe $50 is well worth your money. Don't do dumb things. But we'll see. If you kind of were in a tight power scenario and thermal, the non-XT may play well, especially if you're trying to go really, really tiny. But I just don't see that being the case, because I really think it's going to be about the same physical dimensions with just less power. So you're trying to do like a S small form factor, maybe that fits. But in general, if you're really that tight, the 9060 is probably going to be the better option. It's going to use less power. So
yeah.
And on that bombshell, who knows? Maybe we'll see one of us or both of us with a new graphics card
with
next time.
9070s in the next show. Yeah.
Because you can't buy an AMD, you can't buy a GeForce card. So
yeah.
And if anyone wants to send one in to Moose, he'll gladly take it off your hands.
I mean, I certainly won't complain for a free graphics card. That's for sure. As long as it works and it's not on fire when it's delivered. So
I'll give you a burned connector.
Oh, I can fix that. No problem. So on that bombshell, I'm going to thank y'all for watching. We appreciate you giving us a little bit of your day, and for the second day in a row. And just remind you to do the old algorithmic goodness and fill out the comment form down in the doobly-doo below. Give us a like and throw in a subscribe there while you're at it. And until next time, have fun storming the castle.
Take care, guys. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.